The S58 engine is BMW's new twin turbocharged powerhouse, but there might be a secret issue that could lead to its downfall. The S58 is a 3-liter twin turbocharged inline-6 engine that's completely redesigned from anything BMW's ever made previously. They essentially took the best attributes from the S55 and B58 engines and refined them to create a powerhouse. The S58 comes with 473 horsepower and 442 foot-pounds of torque on standard applications, and 503 horsepower and 479 foot-pounds of torque on the competition models. So needless to say, this engine is an absolute blast and creates a ton of power, especially considering it produces its peak torque at only 2,600 RPM. And one of the main reasons this engine is so powerful, apart from a completely redesigned oil distribution system that allows oil to easily be transferred throughout the internals of the engine, the lowered compression ratio of 9:3:1, and the addition of another turbocharger making it a twin-turboed engine, one of the main reasons this engine is such a performance powerhouse is the advanced and redesigned cooling system. If you moderately know how an engine operates, the cooling system plays a massive role in how much power the engine is able to put out. On the S58 engine, you have a charge air cooler located directly on top of the engine, and so what this does on the S58 is cool the hot air from the twin turbochargers into cool, condensed air before it re-enters the engine for the combustion process, and in simple terms, allows the S58 to produce even more power over a standard turbocharged engine. But the biggest advancement behind the S58's cooling system is the fact that it has 5 other radiators located throughout the system. You have the main engine radiator, which is where most of your coolant's going to flow through. From there, you have a dedicated transmission oil cooler, a dedicated engine oil cooler, and then 2 charge air radiators. So adding all this together, you now have 5 radiators located throughout the front of the engine, and then the charge air cooler at the top, which essentially gives the S58 6 radiators and coolers that keeps temperatures low and produces peak performance and output. And now this may sound like a dream for anybody who wants the most power as possible or wants to track their vehicle and be the fastest car on the streets. And this is 100% true and valid. But where this advanced cooling system falls short is reliability long term. Now the S58 engine has only been being used since 2018, meaning that the engine is not even a decade old compared to the B58 that have been around a lot longer. Now this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but keep in mind BMWs have always been infamous for having cooling system issues, and it's widely known that even as early as the E46 to the E90 and E92 and etc., the cooling system has always been something that you have to overhaul on BMWs. That means replacing the radiators, coolant hoses, water pump, thermostats, and all cooling system related parts at least once. On the E46 and E9X, you can do this for around $1,000 and it's out of the way. It's a one and done issue. But when you start getting to the more advanced, costly S55 and specifically S58 engines, the amount of money spent can really add up, and on top of that, newer BMWs are not as friendly to mechanically work on yourself. It's always kind of been a joke that if you own a BMW, you want to keep a can of coolant in your trunk at all times, but something to think about is with the S58 having 6 coolers and radiators, this issue could really add up long term. And compounding on top of that, BMW has been infamously known to use the terrible plastic to metal radiators. This means you have a metal radiator basically attached onto a plastic housing that transfers coolant. Metal and plastic do not mold together well, which basically causes coolant leaks over time. Again, if you have an E46 or an E9X, you already know this because these engines are extremely known to leak coolant. And on the S58 engine, BMW did not use solid metal radiators across the board. So no matter how much you love the engine, it's simple science. Metal and plastic do not mold together well. So at some point, these radiators will start to leak. And if you own an S55 engine, you know the infamous problem that the intercooler at the front of the engine is facing downwards. This means any rocks that kick up and blow past the skid guard underneath the front bumper can puncture and destroy that intercooler, meaning you'll have to replace it. Looking at the diagram for the S58, it's the same exact setup where you have the engine oil cooler facing down towards the road, meaning that if your car is lowered or if you hit a rock too fast and it blows past the skid guard, your engine oil cooler can get destroyed, and that could lead to you blowing your entire engine. And if you just start to look at the intricacies processes behind the cooling system on the S58, then you'll see there's so many different hoses, connectors, O-rings, and various other components that could go bad over time. So if you're leasing this vehicle, this won't be an issue. You can get it fixed for free. But if you want to own this vehicle up to 150, 200,000 miles, you need to keep in mind every single part on this diagram may need to be replaced over time. The charge air cooler, the expansion tank definitely will need to be, the intercoolers located on the side, the engine oil cooler, the transmission oil cooler maybe, and especially the radiator. And once you start to see all of the vital cooling system components are mounted to the initial larger engine radiator, then you can see working on this is not going to be easy. So again, if you want to own this engine long term, this is all something you need to factor in. No matter how much improvements BMW's made to the performance end of the vehicle, you can't beat simple science that plastic and metal do not mold together well, meaning that you will have coolant leaks over time. Keep in mind you have 6 different points that could be leaking coolant, and then you have hoses all between that could make it even more of a nightmare. So although this engine has made huge strides in the way of performance and reliability, the secret dagger that could kill this engine prematurely and lead to costly repairs long term is 100% the cooling system. And again, with this engine being so new, we won't know long term until it gets to that 150 to 200,000 mile range, or starts to be over a decade old where all of that heat from the engine has compounded and worn out components. But I'd love to hear what you think. Do you own an S58 engine? Have you ever owned an older BMW where you experienced cooling system issues? Leave your experiences down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think the S58 engine will hold up long term, or do you think the cooling system will inevitably be its downfall? Leave your thoughts down below and hit that subscribe button to stay in the loop on more informational videos like this one.